What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over some tips to hopefully help you improve your awareness while playing Fortnite. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below something that you've done to help you improve your awareness in games. So this is something that I've gotten asked about a decent amount on stream or in YouTube comments. And so I wanted to make a video on this, but I haven't done so in the past because I think a lot of this is really hard to talk about. Like, there's very little that I can tell you that's just going to be an immediate like snap improvement. You're much more aware of what's going on. A lot of it comes over time, and as you spend more time in game and become more familiar with the game and kind of what to expect during the course of the match, you just kind of automatically start to do a lot of this better, I think. The first thing we're going to talk about is going to be visual audio, and this is something that I do think is just an immediate snap improvement. Turning on this setting probably will increase your awareness in game. And so if you guys don't know what visual audio is, this is a setting you can turn on. It's in the audio section of settings, and it's called visualize sound effects. And this puts little indicators on your screen for things like footsteps, weapon fire, chests, if an enemy is healing near you, vehicles, a whole bunch of stuff. And if you've watched a lot of content on Fortnite, you've probably seen that a lot of streamers and a lot of content creators have this setting enabled. It was initially added for like hearing impaired players, but it is just like an overall improvement to your awareness. Like, using sound to your advantage in game and hearing that there's footsteps kind of like back into your right or something is definitely something that will improve your awareness of what's going on in game. But also just having this little indicator on screen, it's like essentially an alarm bell. Like, oh, footsteps. I might not have been listening for them in that moment, but now I definitely am because I had this little indicator on screen. So I think one of the few things you can do to just immediately be aware of like enemy movement and what's going on around you is just to turn on this visualize sound effects setting in the audio section of the settings. It does make the game kind of look uglier, but it is what it is, and there's a reason why a lot of people use this setting that are not hearing impaired. If you watch competitive, pretty much every player has this on, and that is because it is a distinct advantage. So turning this on definitely should make you aware of what's going on around you in game. The next one is just going to be to not look at the ground constantly when walking around or playing the game. This is just kind of a very like vanilla basic shooter tip, but like in a lot of first-person shooters or any like competitive shooter game, a lot of newer players will just kind of look at the ground when they're walking around. And not only does this limit your view, if you're looking like a little bit at the ground, it's not the biggest deal. But if you're looking like a decent, amount downward, this really limits your view of what's going on around you and to your sides. And it makes it to where you're going to have to move your crosshair more to react when a fight does inevitably break out if you are just looking at the ground. So try to get out of this habit of looking at the ground constantly. I think a lot of people just do this accidentally and don't even really think about it. And so just kind of hearing about it in this video and maybe being more aware of it, hopefully should limit the amount that you kind of get affected by this. Another thing, and this is going to be something that takes time, is going to be to learn what different sounds indicate, because there's a lot of helpful information from audio in this game that a lot of people might not think about. So like when a player swaps weapons, you can sometimes, like, a lot of the weapons have different audio for the swapping. Like if a player takes out nitro gauntlets, it's going to sound very different than if a player takes out a shotgun or an AR, an SMG. Like, all the weapons have different noises, and hearing that noise can give you a good idea of what the opponent has out and what they might have planned in that situation, Healing items. You might hear that an enemy is healing, but again, a lot of the different healing items have very different audio that can give you a clue into like what that player's situation is. For example, mini shields have a different sound effect than like Big Pots, Flowberry Fizz, Nuka-Cola. And if you hear somebody drinking mini shields, you know that they're not the healthiest because mini shields cap out at 50. So if you hear somebody drinking a mini shield right now, they're less than 50 shield, and they may or may not have any better heals to heal with as well. So like, I'm more inclined to push somebody I hear drinking minis than if I hear them using Flowberry Fizz or a Big Pot. They might be less than 50 while drinking a Big Pot or while drinking Flowberry Fizz, but you don't know that for sure in the same way that you do when you hear somebody drinking a mini shield. And then white heals are the same way. Like if you hear somebody using a med kit, you know they need some white health, and that can give you an indicator into like what's going on with their game. So a lot of different sounds indicate different things, and knowing that can be pretty beneficial. And a lot of you probably know the different sounds, but you haven't really thought about it in the same way. EMP grenades are another big one. You can hear when a player takes out EMP grenades. It has a very distinct noise. So if a player around you takes out EMPs and you're, thinking about getting in a car or about to get in a car, be aware of that. And just in general, even if you're on foot, the EMP grenades are a big deal. So just learning what different sounds indicate in game will go a long way in improving your awareness. I think a lot of this will come with time, though. You got to put in the time in game to just know what these sounds mean and kind of like subconsciously or automatically know it, but also kind of know what that indicates this player is likely to do. Another kind of time where I think a lot of people could improve their awareness is going to be when looting, because after a fight ends and you're getting loot, I think this is a time where a lot of players let their guard down and take way too long looting, and this really impacts their awareness and makes it easy for an enemy player to take advantage. If you just fought, a lot of people in the area are going to know, okay, these players just fought, I'm going to try to third party that, right? And if you're looking at the ground trying to figure out what loot you need, you're not going to be paying as much attention to potential third parties, and you're more likely to get caught off guard. This is something I noticed a lot when making the spectating videos. So knowing what loot you need and what would improve your loadout already makes looting so much faster. If you already have, a gold shotgun, but you have like a white Thunderburst SMG or a white combat AR, whatever you're using, you already got nitro gauntlets, you already got heals, you already got a car counter item. Really, the only thing you need to be checking that loot for is like, did they have a better Thunderburst for me? Like if you have a gold shotgun and they had like a blue or a purple one, you don't even need to put that in your mind what shotgun they had, because you're already happy with your shotgun probably, And then same goes with nitro gloves. Unless they had the mythic ones, you don't really need to pay too much attention to what mobility they had. So knowing kind of what would improve your current standing in the game and what you want most, I think makes it so much easier to loot, because you're just looking for that like one or two things. This will vary throughout the course of the game. So like sometimes you might benefit a lot from getting a kill and need a lot in that moment. But if you're already decently late into the game and you already have like solid loot, just know what would improve your setup, and that'll make it so much faster for you to quick check that loot. Same thing goes with weapon bunkers. Like a lot of times when I go into a weapon bunker, I already know what I'm looking for. Like I know what rarities would improve my weapons. I know whether or not I have EMPs and want more, or if I'm willing to take a bow because there's no EMPs at all, maybe. Same with heals, same with mobility. So just keep these things in mind and know what would improve your current standing, and I think it's going to be so much faster and so much easier for you to loot. Another thing that I think confuses a lot of players is going to be the fact that some players can have hired NPCs, and then also the AI players versus bots, or like AI players or bots versus real players. And learning kind of the distinguishing quality, but like difference between NPCs and players and between bots and players might make it a little bit easier for you to make decisions in the moment. NPCs that players hire typically will have like a glitching effect on them. They can often sometimes even have symbols above their head, like question marks, exclamation points. They even make a noise typically when they react to you, or like when they initially see you. So like a lot of times when there's a player and a hired NPC, I rarely have to think about which one is the player and which one is the NPC, because they stick out. The NPC sticks out so much to me. But if you haven't played as much or haven't been around these as much, it might really confuse you in the moment which one is a player, which one is an NPC, and that is going to make the fight harder for you. And then the same thing goes with the bots. Knowing which players are a bot or not isn't going to win you the game. Like, it's not going to be something that's like, oh my god, I know this now and now I'm winning every match. It's not that big of a deal, but it can make some situations easier because you don't have to pay that much attention to the AI bots, because they're not as much of a threat. They do look like enemy players, and when you eliminate them, it'll show a name like they were an enemy player. But these bots typically have AI generated names, or they're just not anonymous. And the thing that really sticks out, I think, is how they shoot their guns, their accuracy of when shooting guns, and their movement. It's kind of hard to describe, but like once you've been playing the game enough and you've killed enough of these AI, it really becomes obvious when AI are fighting. And when you have AI fighting other AI, both players are often just shooting for like much longer than what would typically happen when like actual players are fighting, And then there's also areas on the map that I feel like are pretty bot dense. Like for some reason in chapter 5, a lot of times they'll just be fighting around bodies of water and just continuously shooting over there, if they're fighting another AI. Or like under this bridge that's kind of in between Lavish Layer and the underworld biome. For some reason I also run into a lot of bots over there. So if I hear just like spam shooting in that area, I'm more inclined to believe that it's an AI. But just learn what the differences are between an NPC that a player can hire and the player themselves. And then also try to be aware of the bots versus actual players. Once you play enough, I think you can tell just based on the movement. And knowing that, I think, makes it a lot easier for you to just kind of know who to focus in a fight. Another thing that I think can improve your awareness is just like try to plan things somewhat ahead of time. I try to always be paying attention to the map over the course of the game. It's not like I have the map open and just stare at it for prolonged periods of time, but I often open it for a few seconds and just check it, because if you're paying attention to the map, you'll kind of know where the zone is going to end up before it ends up. Like if you see the zone is just kind of consistently pulling north, you probably don't want to be hanging out on the south side of zone, because you're more likely to get like griefed by storm or something like that. The storm isn't that big of a deal in chapter 5, but you get what I'm saying. Like if you're actively paying attention to the map over the course of the game, you're going to be caught less off guard when zone does move, and you're going to be able to respond to things easier, I think. And especially in endgame, when you get to moving zones, if it's like a surprise to you where zone is pulling, that is not ideal. So I try to just consistently open the map over the course of the game and just be more aware of kind of how this game is going to play out, knowing that ahead of time and not having to respond to it as much in the moment, I think makes it easier for you to focus on like fights and the decisions you're making in the moment. Also, things like medallions show on the map, and that can be a pretty big indicator of how the game is going to play out. You have all the medallions in one area fighting. That's a decent amount of people that are there, but also there's likely other enemies going to that area to third party it. And then once you get to a certain time in game, the weapon bunkers will show on the mini map, and that will, or on the map, and that will give you a good idea of where people are going and where you might want to go. And then the same thing with Loot Island when it spawns, like knowing where that is. Even if you don't want to go for it, there's probably going to be more people near Island than, across the map away from Island. And so just knowing these things and paying it, that is information you gain from the map, I think makes you more aware of how the game is likely to play out. Another thing that is going to be incredibly obvious, I think, is just going to be to minimize distractions when playing. And if you don't care about the outcome of the game and you're just playing for fun, it's whatever. But if you want to do well in game, you probably don't want to be listening to music when playing, or like a podcast or something like that. I often will watch YouTube videos when I'm playing creative, but if I'm playing the game to play the game, I'm not going to have any YouTube videos on, because that audio can be very distracting and kind of overshadow some audio that you would benefit from hearing in game, but also just kind of distract your mind from what's going on in game. So just as simply as it sounds, if you want to improve awareness in game, pay more attention to the game and kind of minimize outside distractions. That's why I think a lot of this is like kind of hard to talk about, because nobody benefits from me saying just pay attention to the game, but a lot of that's what it comes down to. And a lot of it just comes down to playing a lot. The more you play the game, I think the more you're going to be aware of everything we just talked about. And also, you're going to be faster at making decisions, I think. And so that isn't going to impact you as much. You're not going to be kind of flustered in the heat of the moment thinking about what you should do, because you've been playing so much that a lot of it just comes down to like second nature. And I think that's a lot of what awareness comes down to, is just playing so much that you know what these sounds mean. You know how the game typically plays out. You know how you want to play. And because of that, everything just is a lot more like fluid, I guess, in terms of like how you play the game. But that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful, informative, interesting. Comment down below if you did. Like I said, this was a much harder topic for me to talk about than a lot of other things. But if you did enjoy it, give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.